elements and make it here tonight. Good evening and welcome to the 2013 Hirshhorn Museum Sculpture Garden's Summer Camp Film Festival, this year called Pup Tense. My name's Dave Wilt, and it's been my pleasure to be your camp counselor each year since the Pest Fest Film Festival in 2006. As I said, this year the theme is Pup Tense. It deals with dangerous dogs, killer canines, mean mutts. And I'm not saying that you should get rid of your dog and adopt a kitten or a ferret or a goldfish, but I'm just saying. My job is to provide a little background on the films that we're going to see, place them in the larger context of films, popular culture, society, give you some trivia information, etc., etc. Tonight's movie is the 1993 science fiction thriller Man's Best Friend. But before we talk about that movie in detail, last week we talked about dogs versus cats in popular culture, including movies. We looked at some famous good dogs in the movies and elsewhere. And I mentioned that even bad dogs were more numerous in films than bad cats, at least in terms of the main protagonists of films. And I think that this is general attitudes about dogs and cats, as well as some simple logistical facts about their size and strength, etc., influence the way they're portrayed in popular culture for good and for evil. Bad dogs are more prevalent in pop culture than bad cats, at least partially because, face it, they are potentially more dangerous in real life. A dog can chase you down and chew your face off, then a cat might scratch you a little bit. Plenty of people are frightened when they see a big barking dog, but a cat hisses at you, who cares? Keep on going. And I've never had a cat chase me when I was riding my bike. Maybe I had, but I didn't notice it because it wasn't barking at me or whatever. Also, dogs, and this ties in with tonight's movie, dogs are perceived as man's best friend. And so when a dog turns bad, it's sort of a shock, like a betrayal. Dogs are supposed to be loyal and supportive and so forth. And cats, not so much. You don't really expect a cat to be that way, so you don't really feel betrayed if a cat turns out to be a bad cat. There are, to be sure, some breeds of dog which are stereotyped as bad dogs, like Doberman Pinschers, Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, etc. And German Shepherds are an interesting case, although, as we saw last week, they're epitomized in pop culture by the heroic Rin Tin Tin and Strongheart and the other dogs. German Shepherds do have some negative connotations due to their visible use by some rather repressive organizations in the past. I remember when they used to be called police dogs, and I guess your feelings about them would depend on how you feel about the police. If you ever had a police dog chase you and bite you. Also, they look a little bit like wolves, so that's sort of scary. Of course, it can be argued, and I certainly wouldn't argue against it, that no dog breed is inherently bad. It's human beings who cause them to behave as they do, training them to be bad, or mistreating them, etc., etc. This can also be seen in bad dog movies, where generally the killer dogs are either victimized by scientific experiments, like we'll see in tonight's movie, or they're bitten by a rabid bat, that's what we'll see in next week's movie, or they're trained to be killers, or they're abandoned by their cruel owners, or mistreated, whatever. There's relatively few bad dog movies which depict dogs as bad by nature, inherently bad. For dramatic purposes, of course, most bad dogs in films are really bad. They're not your run-of-the-mill mailman biting canine. And generally, there's something about them that makes them special. Some of the dogs are supernaturally bad. Some are scientifically bad. Others are, bitten by rabid bats going bad, etc., etc. And here's a little montage I did of some clips of some different types of bad dogs in movies.
bicho maloliente! ¡Es mi hermana con quien te estás metiendo!
¡Zack, no!
¿No sabías que fui campeón de lanzamiento durante 3 años seguidos? ¡Ahora verás!
Rottweiler.
Dogs, they're coming. They're coming your way. They'll be here soon. Will you be ready? It happened once. It could happen again. It could happen where you live. Will you be ready for dogs?
The old man was the first to feel it. Then Tom saw it. Then Millie came face to face with it. Last summer, they were pets. Now they are predators. The right move may mean survival, while each moment brings them closer to death.
As opposed to dogs, most serious and as opposed to comedic, bad movie cats are weird cats. In other words, humans who take on cat characteristics. It's like cats by themselves aren't scary enough just being cats, so we have to combine them with human beings to make them big enough and mean enough to be a serious threat. Otherwise, a cat monster would be like, oh, I think I'll take a nap instead of attacking a bunch of people. That's what Hollywood has done. There have been some bad house cats in the movies, but again, there's usually some ulterior reason why a house cat would be a menace. It's either an alien monster cat, or there's 1,000 of them, or it's a ghost cat. In fact, there's a whole genre of Japanese movies dealing with ghost cats. But the way I look at it, it might be a ghost cat, or a ghost dog, or a ghost ferret, or a ghost horse. It doesn't really matter because it's a ghost as opposed to being, oh, it's a ghost cat. That's worse than a ghost anything else. So now we're going to talk about tonight's movie. We'll have a few words about it. I won't give away any secrets or spoilers or anything like that. It's a 1993 movie called Man's Best Friend. And here's a couple of posters. These are locally made posters for the films released generally on video in Africa. And they're sort of, these posters are popular now because they have a sort of naive type of artwork, and I think it's very interesting and entertaining. The poster on the left is reasonably accurate. I mean, it doesn't exactly look like the dog in the movie. In fact, it doesn't exactly look like a dog at all, but that's neither here nor there. But the one on the right, I just don't get it. I mean, for some reason, it substitutes a killer cat for a killer dog. It is the same movie. It has the same title. It has the same catchphrase. But there's a mean killer cat instead of a dog. I mean, I cannot explain this. I have no explanation for that second poster. As I mentioned last week, although this year's film festival, Pup Tense, is all about bad dogs, every film is actually different. In last week's film, The Breed, was a hybrid of what I call the cabin in the woods genre and the nature fights back genre. Man's Best Friend, tonight's film, falls into the pseudo-Frankenstein science fiction genre, where a scientific creation breaks loose, an experiment goes bad, and threatens people, and I call it the science gone wrong genre. Naturally, Frankenstein and its various variations are the preeminent example of this genre, but there's many others. Many of the giant monster films of the 1950s and later also fall into this category, like 1955's Tarantula, which features the giant tarantula. You see, science's deadliest mastiff, so they spell it right after science or wrong. And the classic 1972 movie, Night of the Lepus, which is about a horde of giant mutant bunny men. So, in these movies, many of the scientific experiments that went wrong wound up creating monsters originally well-intentioned. You know, I just wanted to solve world hunger, or I wanted to cure cancer, or eradicate this horrible pest, or something like that. But you know, things went wrong, all super strong killer monster on the loose. My bad, I'm sorry. I didn't intend to do that. There are films other than tonight's movie which deal with scientifically enhanced dogs. We won't forget Tim Burton's Frankenweenie, about a dog revived from the dead. We saw a little clip of the film Rottweiler, which is about a cybernetic guard dog. And there's a film called Watchers, which is based on a Dean Koontz novel about a super intelligent golden retriever that helps fight a monster created in the same laboratory. Unfortunately, the second monster that you can see here shadowing in the background there, he's not only a killer, he's not cute and cuddly like the golden retriever, so he's the one that's bad and has to die. The golden retriever is the hero or the assistant hero of the movie. Max, the monster dog of Man's Best Friend, doesn't use his powers to fight crime, most of the time anyway, so he's sort of a Frankenstein monster variation who just happens to be a dog. However, because Max is a dog, the script allows for various scenes of dog-type irony. You know, Max chases a mailman, Max chases a cat, etc., etc. In fact, tonight's movie, Man's Best Friend, probably does more with the doggishness of the film's menace than the other two films we're seeing this year, since it incorporates many dog-specific aspects into Max's behavior. The dogs in last week's film, The Breed, could have been replaced with wolves or giant shrews or killer hogs or something like that. And next week's movie, Cujo, Cujo could be a gorilla or a bear or something like that. But Man's Best Friend really wouldn't have worked with another animal in the role. And of course, the title wouldn't have been ironically appropriate either. So. The dog in Man's Best Friend is a Tibetan mastiff, a very old breed of dog that originated as a flock guardian in the Far East. Some of these dogs today, as you can see from this picture, are bred to enormous sizes, although Max in Man's Best Friend is more normal size, at least for a mastiff. The font of all wisdom, Wikipedia says, lack of consistent rational discipline can result in the creation of dangerous, unpredictable dogs. I guess they saw this movie. And they also say the protectiveness of Tibetan mastiffs requires alertness by the owner in order to avoid mishaps when the dog is simply performing as a guardian. And as we'll see in tonight's movie, the writer incorporated some of these traits into the script. Max isn't all bad, he's just misguided and fixates on this particular character in the film, and that fits with what we talked about earlier, is that Max is a monster, but he's not a dog who's a bad dog. He was made into a monster by these various scientific experiments. Here's a short trailer for the film that'll give you a few hints about the dog destruction.
Even a chameleon like capability to camouflage itself a threat. In the right hands, Max can save thousands of lives. In the wrong hands, he can be a deadly weapon.
We're in big trouble.
He's coming apart. He is gonna sneak.
Friend was released in 1993. The director and writer was a gentleman named John Lafia, who had previously written the script for the killer doll Chucky movie called Child's Play, and he also directed the sequel Child's Play 2. After Man's Best Friend, Lafia has had a sporadic career in films, television, even directing some video game footage. His credits in recent years are sparse, although LinkedIn says he's running his own production company now. This is probably, along with Child's Play, is probably his most notable film. The human stars of Man's Best Friend are Ally Sheedy and Lance Henriksen. Sheedy is one of those 1980s movie faces like Molly Ringwald, Judd Nelson, Rob Lowe, etc. And she appeared in some of the most popular pictures of the decade, including St. Elmo's Fire, The Breakfast Club, Short Circuit, Bad Boys, the one with Sean Penn, not the one with Martin Lawrence, War Games, and so on. Her career declined as she grew older. It's unfair, it's the way it is in Hollywood for women, unfortunately, although she does continue to work in TV and films. Lance Henriksen is one of those guys like Tommy Lee Jones, who's a distinctive character face. He never lacks the work. His career as a film actor got underway in the early 1970s. The story is that he was born in 1940, and he was actually illiterate until about the age of 30, when he began to be considered for movie roles. He had to learn how to read so he could read the scripts. Henriksen has appeared in many different genres of different films, TV shows, but he's frequently cast in horror, science fiction, and fantasy movies, including roles in an amazing string of famous films. He was in Alien, he was in The Terminator, he was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he was in Damien, Alien 2, Alien 3, Scream 3, Alien vs. Predator, etc. But for Alien, The Terminator, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind alone, I mean, there's not too many other people that appeared in blockbusters like those. He still works steadily, appears on TV, etc., and even does voice work for animated cartoons and video games. Well, it's almost time for tonight's film. I want to remind you that next Thursday night, the 20th, is the final night of this year's Summer Camp Film Festival. The feature film will be the 1983 version of Cujo, based on Stephen King's novel. That's another African post-report, and this one's not entirely representative of the film. It doesn't look like a dog at all, but still it's kind of an interesting poster. So don't miss that next Thursday night, the final film of Pup Tense. Now I want you to get comfortable in your seats, sit back, and get ready for Man's Best Friend. Thanks for coming out despite the threatening weather, and enjoy the movie.